Hi, I'm the Tolkien curmudgeon, and I'm here with a video about Tom Bombadil. Why? Oh, there are so many videos about Tom Bombadil. Why should I do one too? Well, I said I'll be curmudgeon watching The Rings of Power second season, and though it hasn't started yet, we have seen that Tom Bombadil is going to be in it. Why? I don't know. Okay, anyway, people always ask, who is Tom Bombadil? It isn't a foolish question, is it? I mean, after all, Frodo asked it. But why keep on asking it? Who is Tom Bombadil? Who is Tom Bombadil? Over and over again when the question was already answered by Goldberry and by Tom. So when Frodo asked it, this is what Goldberry said. Fair lady, said Frodo again after a while, tell me, if my asking does not seem foolish, who is Tom Bombadil? He is, said Goldberry, staying her swift movements and smiling. Frodo looked at her questioningly. He is, as you have seen him, she said, in answer to his look. He is the master of wood, water, and hill. Then all this strange land belongs to him? No, indeed, she answered, and her smile faded. That would indeed be a burden, she added in a low voice, as if to herself. The trees and the grasses and all things growing or living in the land belong each to themselves. Tom Bombadil is the master. No one has ever caught old Tom walking in the forest, wading in the water, leaping on the hilltops under light and shadow. He has no fear. Tom Bombadil is master. And then later when Frodo asks Tom, who are you, master? He asked. Eh, what? Said Tom, sitting up, and his eyes glinting in the gloom. Don't you know my name yet? That's the only answer. Tell me, who are you? Alone, yourself, and nameless? But you are young and I am old. Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, my friends. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made paths before the big people and saw the little people arriving. He was here before the kings and the graves and the barrow wights. When the elves passed westward, Tom was here already, before the seas were bent. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from outside. So, Tom Bombadil certainly isn't anybody other than himself. I say no to any theory identifying Tom with some other person. Yes, Tom isn't Iluvatar. Tom isn't J.R.R. Tolkien. Tom isn't Aule. Tom isn't Morgoth, and of course he isn't Maglor. Oh, just because Maglor was a singer and Tom Bombadil sings, I mean, who isn't Tom Bombadil? If you take all of those suggestions, all of those persons are not Tom, although they've all been proposed, ridiculously I'd say, as Tom's true identity. But we've already had it. Don't you know my name yet? That's the only answer. Tom is Tom, the same way that you are you, and it doesn't matter what name you're called. When Goldberry said, he is, she doesn't seem to mean the same thing as what God says to Moses in the book of Exodus. She's not saying that Tom is God, for heaven's sake, yet Tom is something of a mystery, as Tolkien intended him to be. But the question really ought to be, what is Tom Bombadil, not who? When I ask, what is Tom Bombadil, I just mean, what kind of being is Tom Bombadil? So anyway, first things first, is Tom an infinite uncreated being, or is he a finite created being? Well, since I've already said he isn't Iluvatar, I think you can guess what I'll say. Of course, he's a finite created being. But obviously, he's not one of the incarnates. That is, a being who is naturally composed of a Feia, a soul, which inhabits a Proa, or body. To my mind, it's safe to assume that Tom is a spiritual being. What else could he be than one of the rational, bodiless beings created by Iluvatar that Tolkien names the Ainur, but who in Tolkien's Legendarium are able to self-incarnate, despite the fact that inhabiting a physical body is not part of their original nature. And that brings me to another theory proposed by some, not by me, that Tom is the personification or embodiment of the music of the Ainur. What? I'm sorry, but no, that's just not correct. However, Tom certainly is an embodiment of part of the music of the Ainur. Of course he is. And so indeed is everyone and everything in the whole of Ea. Ea, the cosmos of all that exists, quite simply is the manifestation of the music of the Ainur, with a little bit of free will there thrown in for good measure. How exactly would one single person who is inside of the world be a personification of the whole music as such? But anyway, let's investigate this idea that he is the personification of the music. What could it mean? Is it like the way that Ulmo is kind of a personification of water, or Mandos is the personification of judgment, or Lorien the personification of dream and vision? I don't know. Anyway, Manwe is the ruler of Arda. Does that make him a personification of Arda? I wouldn't think so. Arda is only a small part of Ea. And if we make Tom a personification of the entire music, then in a sense we would place Tom on a pedestal above Manwe. So then this idea would seem to make Tom the greatest being in the whole world, excepting only Iluvatar the One. But he isn't so great as all that, is he? Well, what is Tom concerned with? The entire universe and everything in it? Far from it. Tom is a very, very parochial fellow, isn't he? He cares about the old forest and its inhabitants and some of the surrounding areas. But he isn't much concerned with what goes on outside, although he doesn't mind meeting up with Farmer Maggot now and again and having a beer. If Tom were the personification of the music as such, he ought to be highly concerned with how the whole drama of the whole world turns out. But he isn't. And he doesn't seem to understand what the problem is with this ruling ring. Personification of the music, which contains the themes of the history of the universe itself, would be pretty near omniscient, wouldn't he? Accepting a bit of free will, of course. But Tom gets his news about the goings on the Shire from Farmer Maggot, not from his knowledge of the music. And although Tom is quite powerful within his own realm, he clearly isn't all-powerful in terms of all Middle-earth, Arda, and Ea itself. Elrond and Gandalf did not express any disagreement with Glorfindel's view at the Council of Elrond that Sauron and his forces would be able to conquer Bombadil if it came to that in the end. Doesn't that imply that Bombadil is not a being greater in power than Sauron? So we can probably say that Bombadil is a being more or less on the level of the greatest of the Maiar. Tom is the master, but he's master only of a small domain in the old forest. But what about Tom being the eldest? Does that mean eldest just in the old forest? Or eldest in all of Arda? Well, when Glorfindel spoke in reference to Sauron conquering Tom, he said that Tom would fall last, just as he had been first. So it seems like general knowledge that Tom is the eldest. So when Tom was first, he was first not just in the old forest. First in Arda? Well, let's think about it. When the music and its vision was finished, the One showed to the Ainur an actually existent world. Out of love for that creation, many of the Ainur entered into that creation and became the Maiar and the Valar. Did they enter in all at once, or in groups, or one by one? We do not know. But if we look at Tolkien's legend of the awakening of the elves, we see that they did not all awaken at once. There was a first elf to awaken, and the elvish word for one became his name in legend. Likewise, among the dwarves, there was Durin, who was the first to awaken. So we can imagine that among the Ainur, there may have been one particular Ainu who entered Arda first. But he doesn't necessarily have to be the most powerful or the most knowledgeable to be first. Perhaps he would be an Ainu who loved the world most for its own sake, or who had the least fear of entering into it. Tolkien called Tom the spirit of the vanishing English countryside. Viewed from within the legendarium, with what I call the intrinsic view, that is, Tom is the spirit of the old forest, which is a remnant of a vast ancient forest that once extended across Eriador, but which has mostly now vanished. I might add, by the way, the forest did not extend across the great river Anduin and over to Rune. That's a jab at the Rings of Power, in case you didn't notice. Now, if we call Tom a kind of nature spirit and suppose that he is the spirit of the place, now called the Old Forest, does that mean that he is something other than one of the Maiar? Well, I really don't see any reason why I shouldn't think, of course he's a Maya spirit. What else could he be? For me, he is a Maya spirit, the master of the Old Forest, as seen through the eyes of hobbits. If you consider what Tolkien wrote about the peoples of the Valar in the Book of Lost Tales, before he ever called them by the name Maiar, well, I'd say that this idea of a nature spirit being a possible role for the Maiar, it fits like a glove. We don't have to suppose that Tolkien necessarily abandoned all of the ideas from the Book of Lost Tales. Anyway, what he wrote about them in the Book of Lost Tales, they were very much like nature spirits. Eh, what's that you say? The Maiar all up and left Middle-earth and went off to inhabit Valinor? Now, wait a minute. We know that not all of them did, such as Melian. And some came back, such as Gandalf. So, Tom, why can't he be one of the Maiar? What? There you go again, saying that Tom's a mystery. Okay, fine, yes, but within Lord of the Rings, Gandalf, all the Istari, and Sauron and the Balrog are all pretty mysterious too, until you read the Silmarillion, and you find out that they were all originally Maiar. So why not Bombadil too? Okay, I'll toss in 1% doubt just to keep in a bit of mystery. Thanks. See you later.